We're back. This is the Intel Hub. Our next guest, Bob Chapman, retired stockbroker and head of the internationalforecaster.com, will be joining us. It's my first time interviewing Bob Chapman, and it's a pleasure. Bob, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Bob, how's it going?
I was just told I was unmuted, and that's good news.
Yeah, so, I know you got the internationalforecaster.com. You're a very busy person. You do lots of radio interviews. What's the latest and greatest at the internationalforecaster.com? What are you guys working on? What are you forecasting right now?
Well, first of all, I'll give you a little background, and second of all, you got to check and see if Alex is getting the International Forecaster.
Yeah.
So that he can pass it on to you, or you can give me your email so you can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll make sure I got that for sure.
Are you getting it as yet?
Yeah. Alex forwarded me.
Okay, that's terrific. Okay, a little background on myself. I was born in 1935. I'll be 75 in a couple of months. And I grew up during the Depression and during the Second World War. Fortunately, I was too young to be drafted. And I attended Northeastern University in Boston. I grew up in the Boston area in a town called Somerville, which is adjacent to Boston. And I spent several years in U.S. Army counterintelligence during the 1950s. And after that, I became a stockbroker, specializing in gold and silver shares. I owned my own firm for many years, and I was a broker for 28 years. I retired. At 52, I couldn't handle it. And, being an A-type all those years, you obviously just can't stop, but I didn't know that until I did it. And I formed the International Forecaster from scratch. And it's about business, finance, economics, social and political issues all over the world. I've lived over half the world in South and Central America, Mexico, Bahamas, Africa, a number of years in Europe. And so I speak 5 languages, and I get around.
Absolutely. Now, some things I've been noticing lately, Bob, that I wanted to talk to you about. The corporate media, they've been set on this blackout mode for a while. A lot of the information pertaining to what's really going on in the world is being suppressed. It's being suppressed from all angles. We're under attack. I hear all the time on TV that we are going to see economic recovery, or that we're in economic recovery. Although, in my opinion, it looks like things are getting worse to me. I have friends that can't even find a job anywhere. Unemployment seems to be on the rise. But they keep portraying this image on the corporate media that, things are getting better. And I just see these signs of things just kind of getting worse. Are we in a recovery, or why is the media pushing that we are so much?
Well, 2 different subjects with a lot in between. First of all, there is no recovery. Mm-hmm. Second of all, the control of media goes back to Babylonian times. They refined it as the centuries have gone. And starting probably in the early 1900s, but even more so during the 1930s, it became what it is today, brainwashing, as it used to be called. And the propaganda that is put out by the major media, misdirection, misinformation, formulating people's thinking, it goes on in a big way today. 97% of the major media is owned by just a handful of people or corporations that are involved in a number of other aspects of our business world and society as well. And so you're not going to get the truth. You're going to get what they want you to have, and you're not going to get lots of news. And that's one of the spaces that we fill. And we go all over the world every day, only in 5 different languages, unfortunately, but we pick up the bulk of what needs to be known about what's going on in the world. And we report it in our publication every week. We have a lot of links to other excellent articles. Sometimes we do publish them in Italian, Spanish, German, French, mainly. We don't have too many subscribers in Asia, probably only about 25 or 50, but we have a lot of them in Europe and South and Central America, Mexico, and so we do occasionally put articles in, although we have them in English as well. And but anyway, we're trying to fill that gap that you're not getting, and we've been doing that for over 20 years. And so if you want to find out what's going on in the world, you want to find out the truth, for someone who really knows how to do research and knows what to look for, which is myself and my small staff, then you'll want to have a copy of my publication or perhaps become a subscriber. And so that's what we do. We give the public everything that they don't want the public to know. Getting back to the recovery, I'm an economist and an analyst, and I've been studying this for over 50 years, particularly the financial and economic conditions in every country. And getting back to the recovery, there is no recovery. What they're doing, and you have to understand this concept, this theory, or you really can't understand what's going on. What you're seeing happening throughout the world, but particularly in the United States and Europe, is an effort by people in the banking and brokerage and insurance industries and in transnational corporations. And they are trying to bring the world economy down. And they're doing it in a very subtle, very sophisticated manner. They've done this before, many times in history. And from that, they expect to get total control. And today they call it world government. And so this is an effort, a coordinated effort to bring the economies and the finances of all the countries down.
Yeah. Are you still there, Bob? Hello? I think we're having problems with Bob Chapman. We'll try and get him back on. You know, I noticed about 5 years ago that there was a major housing boom. Construction was on fire. At that time, banks were just handing out loans to everybody and their brother like hotcakes. You know, they just... I knew illegal aliens that were getting loans for houses. The construction industry was on fire. Through variable interest loans and manipulation, they would fluctuate the market. They would fluctuate. We were noticing lots of fluctuation in oil prices, which then affected the gas prices. So they would give out all these construction loans, and you know you would pay them money in. You would put your down payment on your construction loan. You know, whatever that amount was, 10, 20% down. You would get your house built. You'd be making payments in the meantime on your construction loan. So the bank would be getting all this money, leveraging it over and over again. And then everyone's living paycheck to paycheck is what I noticed. So when there's a little fluctuation in gas prices or in these variable interest loans, basically it would cause people to default because most people are truly living paycheck to paycheck, and so they overfinance people. They raised the real estate prices so much, real estate went up, the bubble went up so much that these houses were way overlisted. So essentially they would just, out of thin air, loan money out for these construction loans. So when people defaulted on these loans, essentially the banks would just repo back a tangible asset and, make out on the deal. So the bank would acquire this tangible asset. It just seems like a total consolidation of power. Bob Chapman, if you can hear me, maybe try to call back in. Somehow you dropped off of our caller screen, and we'll get you back on. But yeah, total consolidation of power, consolidation of banks, and that's the first scam that really struck me, that stood out to me in my mind, was I just noticed them giving everyone loans for everything. People were building like crazy, and like I said, they were even, I knew an illegal, Mexican illegal in Arizona that owned 3 houses. They gave her a loan for 3 different houses. So extremely interesting how they've orchestrated this, and then they popped the bubble. Now real estate prices are dropping nationwide. They're actually coming back down to almost where they should have been in the first place. So it's just, it's looking like the market's kind of settling down. I know when I was a kid, you could buy your average middle-class house was like $80,000 to $100,000. And, just recently, that average house a few years ago probably would have been $300,000 to $500,000. So there's a lot of change in the real estate market, manipulation, the market going up and down. Now it's back down. And, it's at a level now to where, people just can't afford much, but the market's dropped back down to a fairly reasonable manner, or a state or status, I guess you would say. So, that's what we're looking at. Yeah, that's when I kind of woke up to this whole financial scam, just knowing that they were pushing these loans on everyone. And it really took me back. Bob, are you with us now?
I have been unmuted.
Absolutely.
See what happens when you have me on your program? You get cut off.
It's probably,
and it's not unusual. Sometimes I get jammed.
The New World Order is jamming us right now.
This was extemporaneous. I don't think so. But anyway, we don't have any problem with our phones, so maybe it came from your end. But it doesn't make any difference. I'm here, and that's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was going to explain was at the same time, the banks. Now, banks create money out of thin air.
Yeah.
And historically, they've created $9 for every dollar that they have on deposit. They call it fractional banking. And they lend that money out. That historically has been considered prudent. What these banks have been doing is lending up to 70 times, which is insanity.
Yeah.
Now, currently, they're 40 times. So their books are still a mess. Almost every major bank in Western Europe and the United States, for starters, are insolvent.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting with all this toxic waste, these MBSs, these CDOs, these bonds that contain mortgages. They're worthless. In fact, the United States government asked the Federal Reserve to buy some of these. The Federal Reserve is a bank, the central bank for the United States. It's privately owned by some of these same people who were selling these toxic bonds.
Yeah, none of this makes any sense. It's just amazing the kind of scams they pull.
Well, this is enormous, and they've been doing it since 1913 in its present state. So what they did was they went to the banks, the Fed, that creates this money out of thin air. They went to the banks who create money out of thin air as well, and they bought, that they admit to, because they lie all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They bought $1.7 trillion worth of this garbage, Now, the banks are still loaded with it, not only in the United States, some of it in other places, but mostly in Europe. 60% of these bonds were sold in Europe. And so you can imagine why they got some of the problems that they've got today. And so the evolutionary process of taking the financial system down didn't happen by chance, because bankers would never, ever lend 60 or 50 or 70 times their underlying assets.
Yeah, that would be a bit like bad business, essentially. You're looking for a problem.
Well, they would destroy themselves.
Yeah.
But the Fed came to the rescue, and the American taxpayer will get to pay for it. So all the money that the banks have lost, you get to pay for it. Now, they're not finished yet because the banks are still insolvent. Now, they've lent, that we know of, that they'll admit to, $12.8 trillion to these banks. Trillion, with a T. Like a Tom?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
At the same time, they've lent trillions of dollars to foreign central banks in Europe, England. In Europe, England is not considered part of Europe. The continent is Europe to them. If you didn't know that, you do now. And if, I lived there for years, so you know those things. So anyway, that's why the banks in Europe have got such problems. But heretofore, over the last 10 or 12 years, some of the countries have had problems anyway, such as Greece and Italy. The problems that have occurred in Ireland and Portugal and Spain and even in Eastern Europe, in Austria, Hungary, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine, Iceland, they're all on the verge of bankruptcy. In fact, for all intents and purposes, Iceland's gone under. And so that's how this all evolved. And it was done deliberately.
Yeah, and now, Goldman Sachs is saying some of their bailout funds that they received from AIG, from taxpayer money, went to international banks. To me, that seems illegal. How do they just take taxpayers' money, they get it rolled into their institution, and then now they're just turning it over to international banks? Doesn't that seem almost treasonous?
Well, first of all, it's illegal. Second of all, it is treasonous. The amount was $112.4 billion.
We got a break. We'll be right back here in a few minutes. This is the Intel Hub. You're listening to American Freedom Radio.